Welcome to Group Therapy, where healing gets real. I'm your host, Quayne O. Bartlett Jr., and this is where it starts. Before the guests, before the roundtables, before the stories that will break your heart wide open and stitch them back together again. I want to begin with something sacred, an introduction, because introductions are a kind of prayer, and this introduction is mine. Let's be real clear. This isn't therapy, right? But this is therapeutic. We don't diagnose here. We don't do diagnoses. We don't do labels. But what we do is hold space. We do honesty. We do complexity. We do showing up, even when the pieces of ourselves that haven't quite healed yet are still with us. Because sometimes healing starts with just telling the truth out loud and being witnessed in it. So for myself, my why, my quick elevator pitch in terms of my survival as a former testimony. I didn't grow up with power handed to me, contrary to popular belief. Regardless of who my parents are or were, I didn't have trust funds or safety nets. I had grit. I had pain. I had the weight of high expectations that I was never meant to survive under, like many of us. I have been criminalized. I have faced homelessness. I've been gaslit by the very same systems that are built to fail people like me and then blamed for my own suffering. And when I clawed my way up, when I built a reputation, it was only then that I truly understood what it meant to be a leader and earn seats at executive tables. And still, I wasn't safe. So I want to tell you something that I haven't shared widely or publicly. My most recent job, I served as executive on the senior leadership team. Right here, very local, very integral in our society for day to day operations in the Virgin Islands Housing Authority. And I was supposed to be serving communities like the one that I came from, and cherishing that opportunity to give back to the very same soil where me myself, was nourished, cultivated, plucked from the vine, and then sent off to college to become a better person, per se, to experience the world, per se, to hone my skills, my crafts, my abilities, and then come back and feed the soil again. And yet still, I found myself targeted, not for misconduct, but for being too honest. Like many of us who are Gen Z, Gen X, millennials, we're too honest in systems that weren't built on honesty, for being too ethical, for being too unwilling to let things slide. Because one of my favorite quotes, you let things slide once, you let it slide twice, eventually people will cha-cha slide all over your back, right? So my being targeted was built on that. But where I really saw it was when I requested accommodations under the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. You would look at me and you would not be able to think, or not necessarily think, not be able to see and put a label on, well, he has a disability, but I am neurodivergent. I, very young, came to learn about the realities of the autism spectrum. I am formally diagnosed with ADHD, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, predominantly inattentive. So I got to have a lot going on to be able to accomplish small tasks. But the big task, like keeping things in check, supervising employees, making sure the work gets done behind the scenes. That happens with an AirPod in my ear and just fire in my soul. It comes naturally. And so for me, instead of being met with compassion and understanding, I was met with ridicule. And one of the most troubling experiences I've ever had in the midst of that process was being on the phone with the director of resident wellness and empowerment, and her letting me know that I am, quote, the weakest link. Let that sit for a minute. Being a high performer, having a disability, but still coming into a space as one of the most qualified. I am young, but check my resume, you know, highly qualified, highly trained, highly educated, has held licenses, certifications. I've poured into myself, but still I was told I am the weakest link. Think about what that does to a young black man trying to make a difference in a space where someone like him gets to exist for the first time. Think about the door that you close with just those words. And so I was denied basic accommodations while I watched others be given leniency for absolutely lesser needs. And this is not to take away from what would be someone else's truth and someone else's struggle, but looking at the reality of things and, you know, Virgin Islands government, the selective application of policy where what good for the goose isn't even offered to the gander, right? And so for myself, that was the beginning of a downward trajectory for a future in that agency for me, because I began to see the retaliation, because I began reporting the things I saw, the payroll fraud, the contract abuses, outright corruption. Eventually, I left on medical leave, had to get myself together. The job was actually making me sick. And my phone pings. And I said, okay, another email. Let's see what fresh hell I got coming in from them today. Termination effective the same day. No process, no meeting, nothing. But on the back of all of my emails, my recordings, and everything that I put forth to let them know, hey, I see what you're doing, and I'm going to make sure that everyone else does as well, because you're hurting the people that you're supposed to be serving. Just like that, got the axe. And so after that, it was okay for me, because the universe is something that I try to let lead. One of the biggest issues we have in life sometimes is trying to steer a ship that we're just a passenger on, right? And so it was time for me to, quote unquote, know my place, which is something that my former colleagues are trying to teach me in a malicious way. But I let the universe show me where I'm supposed to be. And so, with that decision and recognizing that what would have been a stepping stone for transformational work, what would have been silent but loyal service, came to an abrupt end. And let me be clear, I didn't just survive that experience. I want to be clear that I documented it, I recorded it, I reported it, and I stood up, which is something that isn't rarely seen in our culture our government, these agencies, and these systems. And now I'm speaking to you because the same voice that they tried to silence is the one that you're hearing now. And that's my why. That's my reason for sitting in front of you, for you hearing my voice, and for you being a witness to the beginning of what I know is going to be a transformational space. And so, the mission of this space, group therapy, is what I needed in those moments when I was isolated, grieving, angry, and just unraveling, trying to figure out which way is up and which way is down. It's what I needed when my nervous system was on high alert, but I still had to show up and perform. And I think we've all been there where our anxiety is through the roof, but we still have to put on a suit, a tie, that work attire, and show up as if everything is okay. When we have to go in and make miracles happen in broken systems while we ourselves break silently inside. So, this podcast is for anyone who's had to be strong for too long, for the ones who have cried in the bathroom, then showed up with a straight face, for the ones holding it together in public while falling apart in private. This is our space now. And we don't do perfection here, we do presence. We show up as we are. And so, for our mic check, this is where we take a moment and ask ourselves the questions that help us better understand where we are. When was the last time you told the truth about how you were doing without shrinking it to make others feel more comfortable about your experience, good or bad? Who taught you what strength looks like? And what are you now unlearning about that particular belief? Where are you in your life right now, still showing up in survival mode, even though the emergency is over? Where are you still on high alert when the threat is gone? And what is one thing your younger self needed to hear that no one ever said? Because I am a firm believer, as adults, we become the people that we needed when we were children in some way, shape, form, or fashion. So ask yourself those questions and sit quietly and listen to your voice as you answer. And be honest, because this is what we do here. We heal, but we heal through honesty. So before I let you go, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for showing up. Thank you, every single one of you, for trusting me to hold this space with you. If you know me, you know I'm not perfect. I am not fully healed, but I'm present. And I'm building a space where wholeness is welcome, even if that hole is broken, even if all of what you are is a mess. This is a space to be that beautiful mess. This is group therapy, and I am so glad that you're here. In the episodes that are coming, we'll talk about the first time we ask for help, what it breaks, what it builds, what's the bravest thing we can do for ourselves, who taught us how to be us, who took a chance on us, and what would we look like without the layers of trauma that make us who we are. Until then, take care of yourself, and you're not alone. Not here, not ever. Be well.